Segments from Life in the Arts can now be viewed on demand on YouTube.com. Just go to YouTube.com, add /longtimers, and that will take you to our YouTube channel. Welcome to another edition of Life in the Arts Classic Light. On today's program, a lesson in plein air painting with Cyndra Bradford, on location at the Red Wing Horse Sanctuary in Carmel. And now, here's Cyndra.
Our light today is such that you probably could almost spend the whole day if it stayed like this, and it would be the same. It's diffused. But so the way I try to paint, I paint very impressionistic, and I paint quickly and emotionally, and I try not to, I'm not a realist, and so that's kind of the way I work. I also do lots of color. If I see, for instance, this horse is brown, he may not exactly come out totally brown. He may have reds happening in him. He may have blues where the shadows are, and that kind of thing. And there's my favorite horse over here, which is he's a Percheron. His name is Junior, by the way. And anyway, he's a Percheron, and he's got all these beautiful dapples, and you can really play with the colors on those. And I've painted him quite a bit. And he's a character. He has an attitude. I do use turquoise. It's one of my favorite colors. But you don't really need to put green out. In fact, I would say green is probably the most difficult color to use, so it's better to make your own. And first start out painting is limit your palette. Just use your primaries so you don't get too many different colors going. Basically horses, just to give you a quick idea of how they're put together. Horses are a series of round shapes. Here's the front end, here's the back end. This is just really loosely. And so then basically, and then their heads, and then their fronts. So, you know, I want you to feel free just to go ahead, and this isn't going to be your final thing, but, you know, let your brush move and just kind of get the feeling of the animal. Like he would be a perfect candidate, although I've got this guy's head too tall. But just sort of get the feeling. And then what you're going to want to do when you paint, you're going to want to put in your darks first. Try not to go into your lights, because your darks will basically indicate to you what you're going to be, you know, you get all your dark shapes. I see there's a dark shape. I'm doing this black horse over here. Dark shape in here. Be careful with your darks, because if you get too heavy with your darks, you just lose a lot. Basically, dark should be lean, which means thin, and your lights should be heavy and thick. So here I just indicated, oops, there he goes. The problem about doing horses plein air is, one, they do move. So this is another reason that you've got to be quick. And but you see I've got kind of basically his shape of his face and his darks. And so these areas of here will be more in the lights. I don't worry that I went up like that at this point. What I usually do when I paint is I'll kind of work in the horse first, and then I'll come in, and you'll notice that I'll cut in with my background colors and my lights, and so I don't worry if I go over and beyond. Okay, as you notice now, I've done this little short sketch, and then now what I'm doing, I've got this large brush. This is one of my favorite brushes. And so what I'm going to do, now I'm going to start saturating the color in here on these horses. And so I'm going to get a little white. This is a thing about plein air painting. You can't control your environment, really. You just have to kind of work around it. And so I'm putting in his... There again, you still want to start working with your darks, and before you go into your lights. So, although they don't have to be completely dark. And some of the ways I'm getting some of these grays is by mixing a cad red in with the turquoise blue, and I'm getting some of that. That's how I'm getting some of these grays. You don't really need to buy a gray. And okay, that's better. It's fairly dark in this animal. So I'm just kind of looking. You always look. You know, it's that's the best part about plein air is that if you look, you'll see things that maybe you didn't notice a few minutes ago. How the light plays in the horse, or you know, the shapes or something. Oops. And don't worry about making a mistake. It's a little yellow, but I'm not going to really freak out about that right now. And to hold a brush, you know, you're not drawing, you're not writing your name. You don't want to hold it like this. You kind of really want to hold it as loosely as possible, and not try to hold it too stiffly. So I may put my finger here, but I'm trying not to hold this too stiffly. And put this down. Work in with some of my darks. Just indicate the line a little bit better. Now, even though he's left, I can still kind of figure it out where he was. Just from my original little drawing here, I can kind of get the feeling of this animal. So if his tail goes out, that's okay. What you're doing, you're connecting, that you're letting the viewer know that there's a world outside of the canvas. And so by letting something go out of your canvas, that's good. Just like the mountains and the trees. I don't try to keep everything within a little tiny scope. I want to make it look like it's the world's a lot bigger than what you see. And okay, now as you see, I haven't really put the light in to the horses yet. I'm going to leave that probably until last. So now what I want to do is I want to come in with some of my background colors, and I'm going to liven this thing up because it's sort of dull and gray. Even though it's kind of a grayish day, it doesn't mean it has to be dull and blah. So I'm going to mix up, and I'm pretty literal with my paint, especially in the background. And I'm trying to get some of these. I'm looking at those mountains in the back. I see lots of purples and reds happening, and I'm going to see if I can't get some of those things happening here. And I'm going to put this in the background. And take my other dark brush. Now I'm going to keep that for my lights, or my warms. And I'm just going to try to get, use this one for more of my darks. So now I'm going to put these trees in here and just kind of get the feeling of those trees coming down. And you know, it doesn't have to be perfect. Then I'm looking at those mountains. I see, gee, there really has a lot more of a warmth than I originally noticed here. So I'm going to get a little literal back there, and a little more interesting. And this is where I could start cutting into this horse a little bit. And I don't have to see. You see why I wasn't worried about shapes at the time, because I knew I was going to cut back into him. Let me put a little more light in there. And so, see, at a photograph, I might not have noticed these things. And so I'm just kind of moving around, getting some feeling. Doesn't mean it's going to be that's where it's going to be. And then I'm going to come in with some of my even darker trees back in here. Now you notice I'm making all my own greens. And I'm going to come in back in here. This will probably be my darkest areas back in here. Put a little bit more yellow in there. I don't make it too dark. And see, as I made my green here, it's more of an interesting green that you might be able to get from a tube color. You just really can't get those kind of greens from a tube color. See now how I cut that in like that? You know, I probably will leave that if it'll work. And then I'm going to bring in a little more light over in here, add a little of that. Just for, and you see I'm losing my brush loosely, and I'm trying to, and then I'll leave a little bit of that red coming in because it kind of anchors the painting. Now I'm looking at those trunks right now of those trees back in there. I'm not going to get too literal with them, but I can see they got some reds in them, and they got some things happening. And I'm just going to try to sketch them as lightly as possible and try not to make them look like they're coming out of the horse's butt here, because we don't need that. So I'm going to knock that off a little bit just so it doesn't look that way. And you can always come back with your dark brush here and add a little bit more pigment on top. So, because actually branches are within the trees and not, the branches aren't on top of the trees, they're within the trees. So yeah, cut them in a little bit. And you can see I don't worry about trying to literally get them in exactly. All I'm trying to do is indicate, so when you see it, your eye says, okay, that's trees, and then that's enough. Oop, messing with it too much. Don't want to do that. And I see this as a problem. You don't ever want to stop. Here's the trees, here's the horse. That's a line there. I think I want to try to break that up a little bit. So I'm going to do some smaller trees down in here to connect the trees in the landscape down. So that's compositional problems. You don't want to do that. Working with my darks. A little dark in here. Just to make it go back a little bit. Okay, now I kind of have a feeling of what we got here. And when you get back in the background, the rule of thumb is you want to really kind of go and make it softer colors, and maybe more even in the purples, because what that does, it recedes. And so even though you may see those as the same, but if you look at those trees and the background trees, these ones here on this side are a lot darker, and the ones in the back have a lot more of the fog and atmosphere that is actually softening them. So you want to be sure to check that when you're working, to not get those too dark, because what happens, they'll come forward. And I'm kind of looking, even though I don't have much room here on these, that mountain side there is really pretty, so I'm going to try to get color, and I'm just going to have one little stroke here if I can. This might have been a better brush. Never feel you can't change your mind as you're working this. This painting should be a joy, not a struggle. And yep, not getting it, but I'm kind of looking and seeing, trying to get it. Maybe it's almost a little bit more like that. We'll see. I'll try to make the stroke here. And nope, wasn't really what I wanted. So I feel free that I can come back, and that's better. And see how that one stroke just says it. You don't need to do any more. In fact, back down in here, I'm going to slow this down a little bit and emphasize that hill a bit more. Okay, well, that's probably enough. I've got the sky now. I don't know, I may not do the sky yet. I'm going to wait. Sometimes I do the sky last, because the sky sometimes can be the most difficult thing to do is the sky. And that you can kill a painting that way, real easy. Now I'm going to go in, even though I know these hills are kind of, everything's kind of gray. I'm going to see if I can't get some of this better colors happening in here. Add a little bit more. You see now I'm using these same brushes, so what's happening when I'm doing this is that there's a little bit of all this color is going into every part of this painting. So what happens is, you know, you don't have red spot, you don't have a green spot, you don't have a blue spot, you have all these colors are mixing so that they relate. Because in reality, all our light fusion is the same. So all these colors, even though they're different, will relate. And even though I'm not a rocket scientist, I do know that. So now I'm kind of coming in and I'm going to start cutting around these horses. And since I'm trying to pinpoint some more than others, I'm going to try to, I'm going to kick up my color a little bit because it won't hurt it any. And this is where I'm going to have to get a smaller brush because it's too big. Just to get in between here. So, my horse is trying to leave some of this sensitivity here. I might kick it up a little bit more. In fact, if you ever see one of my paintings, I actually go in with a pretty bright color sometimes. It'll be like pure on yellow and shake. And so now I'm thinking that horse's head's way too short. So now I'm gonna have to fix it. Because if nothing else, the animal has to work. If it doesn't work, it has to stand up. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it has to physically stand up. So this is it. Now that I've made a mistake here, or design flaw, I'm going to go like this. This is some way that you could take out that whole thing here. Take out that head, or you can use a cloth. Just knock it out a little bit. And see if I can't get this head to come down where it's supposed to be. Whoop. Nothing like being on camera. Okay, well, you know what? If you get confused or frustrated with a spot, leave it and come back. You know, it's like, otherwise you can end up drive yourself crazy. So I'm going to leave it for now and go on to something more exciting. I'm just going to try to work around this guy a little bit. Cut in his legs and his head. Maybe work in here. Maybe if I get the rest of the body figured out, maybe that head will come back into play here. Partly the problem I see right now is that the horse is kind of standing like that. So physically, he may not really be able to stand that way. So what I'm probably going to do, I'm going to bring a leg out like so, because physically he would fall down. So basically, as you're going, you're working with your design and your sense of space, color. So you've got a lot of things. Art is problem solving. You set up a problem and then you got to solve it. And so that's kind of what it is. And that's why if you see an artist, usually they don't paint the same scene twice because they've already solved the problems. They don't need to do it again. It just isn't that exciting to them. See, now I finally think I solved it here, that this horse, even though I'd like that leg back, physically it couldn't do it. It couldn't be like that. So I'm going to come in again, just emphasize what's front and what's back. So, and still working on this here, a little shape in there. And feel free to let your brush do the walking. I'm going to put a little color down in here, even though there's no shadow today, just to ground them a little bit. Excuse me. Okay, well, it's a fairly gray kind of painting, and then I could liven it up a little bit, I guess. Let's try it. As I say, I paint with no fear. If for instance, there's no reason to get all worried and gee, I can't do that, because if you don't have it anyway, there's no reason to worry about it. And so I call it painting with no fear. So here I'm going to go in with a whole different kind of color here. Hell, add a little more red, and kind of a little more. What I'm doing, I'm kind of grounding those horses a little bit, and step back, look and see. I still haven't put my lights in the horses yet, so as you see, I'm just indicating the legs at this point, and kind of like that. This is still a little weak back in here, but there again, I'm not going to worry about it. And so now I might wipe my brushes off a little bit, because what I want to do is go back into the lights now. And with oils, even though you don't really have to clean your brushes totally, just if you could just wipe out the excess pigment, you can basically get back in there and use the same brushes. And there again, it has that color that you've been putting through your whole painting anyway, which you really want. You don't really want it to be too different. I'll try to get some prettier white here. So I want to get that sky. You never want to use full on white, but I want to get that sky, which has got a lot of light in it back there. A little bit more yellow in it. And where the sun is trying to peek through here. And, whoops. Well, that's why we didn't want to be in there. So, and then I might go a little bit yellower. And then I see some of the sky holes happening in here. And and then as I'm working, instead of just, using my brush, I come back in and get a little fresh paint. So that way I don't end up using the same brush, because it gets dirty. And I don't worry about getting thick. I kind of like it that way. This is what I like about this brush, because this brush is just awesome when it comes to thickness. Now I'm going to see if I can get a little bit of that gray fog coming down here, because that's kind of nice. A little bit of alizarin there. And I'm going to kind of go see if I can put it kind of a feeling of heaviness over the whole thing here. And that's kind of our atmosphere here. And then I noticed way back, see, this is something I wouldn't have noticed, back in those hills there, right behind these trees, I see a little bit of the mountain coming through. Whether I can accomplish that or not, I'm not sure, but we will try. Just to indicate maybe back in here, that mountain coming through. Which actually in reality doesn't come there anyway. A bit more of a blob here. Oops. So I get little sky holes and, you know, just little pieces here and there just to bring that sky back in. Probably enough of that. Okay. Always think of your areas like the horse. In order to make him somewhat stand out, you got to figure he's going to be kind of a little different from the background, but with some of those colors coming through. And I'm going to put a little bit of blue there. What the heck? He's a kind of a dappled gray. He's got a lot of colors going on. But that's just enough to make that maybe a little bit more interesting. And I don't want to touch that. I like that. So now this black horse, I'm going to see if I can't come in with him with a little bit of that purple. And get something interesting going on here in his lights. Now my main way of going, I really am not trying to be realistic, as you can see. I just really just trying to get the feeling of the animal, feeling of the day, and it is a loose possible way that I can do it and still have it read as that's a horse and that's a tree, and might have been too much. See, I did too much. All right, well, that's okay. I'm not going to worry about it. I'm going to come back in with more of my darks and kind of knock that back. And still keep some of those colors if I can. And actually, in reality, he would have a little bit of stomach here. That's probably what the problem is. There we go. See now how I thought, gee, I made a mistake, but I think I pulled it off. You really never know what you pull off until you take it away from your scene anyway. You just really, is like anything, it's a hit and miss when you're outside. I mean, I don't know how long I've been working on this, but I'm sort of pulling this all together. Now, to me, I see that this and this is fighting. I got to figure out what is it that I'm trying to say with these horses. I kind of like that one, and I'm not so sure if I like this one or not. And so I have to make a decision whether, one, I want to leave him in there, two, I just want to cut him back a little bit. Maybe his legs are too tall, or he's just too noticeable. Maybe I can come in and just kind of cut him out a little bit, just not make him show up so much. Maybe it's just a little bit of a thing right here in his chest or something about him that's just bothering. Maybe it's just he doesn't have a back on him. So maybe I can indicate that, and then because really it's like, what are you trying to say? I mean, are you trying to say horse and field, or are you trying to say or you want to just have the horses to be the most important? That helped a little bit. And so you know that's you're trying to make those that call all the time about what you're trying to say, and try to keep it in mind. But a painting in itself has its own, I always say they have their own mind. Okay, well then one of the most important things you got to remember, and it's the best time to do it, is right when you feel that you're done with a painting, is you got to sign it. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to find out where to sign it. You don't want it too dark or too obvious. And what's nice about signing your painting when you have your palette in front of you is that you can, you've got the paint all mixed up, it relates, and so you don't have to try to match it later. And so I basically am just going to put my name, Cyndra, right there, and then ta-da. And that's usually when I think that I'm done with a painting, is when I sign it.